Once every year, in late April, early May, a magical event takes place. Fantasy Faire begins on the 20th of April, and mythical beings from far and wide are drawn to the enchanted lands of the fair. None are able to ignore the call of the homelands. Even those who have dared to venture into the human world are drawn back to the Fairelands, unless they have some kind of enchantment placed upon them. But enchantments can be broken. If the magic isn't strong enough or the enchantment reaches its expiry date, the call home will be heard. None born of the Fairylands can stay away forever. Eventually all must return home.
It was late spring, in my 18th year, and it was a glorious day outside. I had no plans to tie me down, so I took a basket for collecting treasures and went to a forest reserve I used to visit with my father as a child. When I arrived at the forest and stepped into the trees, something seemed different. I am long past the days where I should be entertaining the idea of fairies and sprites, but today the air seemed alive, as though it was buzzing with a kind of electricity, a kind of magic. I ventured deeper into the woodlands, skipping along the overgrown tracks, the way I did when I was small. Something about this place awakened the child within me. I came across a clearing with an old stone tower and the overgrown remnants of what would have been a beautiful garden once upon a time. I don't remember this part of the forest, but it wasn't far from the path. It seemed strange that I'd never come across this area before. I'd explored this forest so many times. Daisies and some roses had taken over in one spot, so I stopped by the flowers to enjoy their scent and pick a few to take home with me. I sat down on the grass, enjoying the sun and the fresh air on my skin. I snacked on some wild raspberries I'd picked along the way and made some daisy chains, the way my father taught me when I was a child. It occurred to me then that it had been 9 years this very day since I had last seen my father. How odd that I should decide to visit this place we shared on this very day. My father had gone missing under some unexplained and mysterious circumstances when I was only 8 years old. One day, he simply walked out the front door to go to the grocery store and never came back. Disappeared without a trace. My mother and I were heartbroken, of course. My father was a good and loving man. I always had the sense that my mother knew something more about his disappearance. But if she was keeping some kind of secret, she carried it to her grave when she passed away 3 years ago. I had known sorrow and loss in my young life. Things had not been easy since I lost my parents. The sun caught my eye, interrupting my thoughts, and I looked to the tree line. That's when I saw her, watching me. She was a fairy, with the palest skin and adorned in green and flower petals. Delicate wings twitching curiously as she watched, an inquisitive but knowing expression on her face. I was startled, and then she was gone within the blink of an eye, and in the end, I wasn't really sure I had seen her at all. A trick of the light, I told myself, and went back to enjoying my time connecting with nature and reflecting on happy memories from my past. Eventually, after some time, I drew myself up to continue my wandering. The tracks leading from this clearing seemed to look different. I can't be lost, I told myself. I know this place like the back of my hand. I chose a track and followed it. The light caught my eye once more, and there she was again, to the left, off the side of the path. Again she was gone in what seemed like a heartbeat. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. This seemed like a dream, but there was a familiarity to it, almost like a memory, although I was certain that nothing like this had happened to me before. I continued down the track, which seemed less and less familiar the further I went. The mysterious fairy figure appearing and disappearing each time before I had a chance to really see her. Eventually, the track led me to an old stone courtyard nestled in the trees. Inside the courtyard were the remains of what once would have been a place for grand garden soirees. Nature had long since reclaimed this area, with moss and vines growing all about, but the stone walls stood strong. There was a large sofa with plush cushions in one corner, which looked clean and somewhat inviting. Suddenly, I was overcome with the need to rest my head, so I lay down and closed my eyes. And there she was, in my dreams, the fairy. I could see her face, her arm outstretched, her hand beckoning to me. I have no idea how long I slept, but when I woke, I stretched, and through my bleary, awakening eyes, I saw the strangest thing. My skin was so pale. Something tickled my back. I reached around to see what was causing the sensation, and I found wings. When I looked down, I was clad in green leaves and flower petals. I was the fairy. How could this be? A strange tingling was running through my body, and suddenly it felt as though I was wavering, evaporating. I closed my eyes, and I felt as though I was rushing through the very essence of existence itself. And then, after some time, I landed on my feet. I opened my eyes. I was in a different place. There were colourful toadstools as tall as trees, as far as the eye could see. There was life and movement all around me. Tiny toadstool folk danced around. Humanoid dandelions and sunflowers gathered together, talking in the grass. Fairies frolicked nearby, and I stood there with my jaw wide open, wondering how in the world any of this was possible. As I stood there in disbelief, a man approached me. He was taller than me and had long brown hair, pale skin similar to mine, and a very familiar face.
Abigail.
He greeted me, extending his arms, inviting me into an embrace.
I have missed you so much. my beautiful daughter.
It was my father, and he had wings. My father was a fairy. I fell into his arms, tears of joy and confusion streaming down my face. "Father," I said, "how can any of this be possible?" He took my hand and led me to a quiet place where we sat side by side.
Abigail, 18 years ago, I found a portal that leads to our special forest, and I found myself in the human world. I met a human girl playing in the forest there, and I fell in love with her. I discovered a magical enchantment that allowed me to stay in the human world for 9 years. I loved your mother so much and could not bear to be apart from her. In that time you were born, our little half-fairy daughter, and we lived our lives happily together. 9 years ago, this very day, the enchantment broke, and I was called back here to the Fairylands. I had no choice but to return. None born of the Fairylands can ignore the call home. I tried to find my way back to you and your mother so many times, to no avail. I missed you both terribly.
Everything fell into place. This would take some time for my brain to process. I was half fairy, and I had a family again. I sat with my father in the Fairlands, overwhelmed but full of joy. We were home.